There is a sentence buried in the Bible that appears exactly twice. Once at the start of a story, once at the end of it. And in between those two appearances, a nation falls apart. A woman is destroyed by the men who should have protected her. A city is burned to ash, and an entire tribe of Israel is nearly erased from the earth. Stay with this story to the very end, because that sentence, 4 words long, is the reason for all of it. And once you hear it the second time, you will understand exactly what happens when a people forgets who is supposed to be on the throne. This is not a story about one villain. It is a story about what happens in the space where no one is in charge. Not a king, not a conscience, not even God, as far as anyone in it seems to notice. It is the story of the men who saw evil and did nothing, and the one man closest to the victim who saw it and did something worse than nothing at all. This is the story of Israel's civil war. In those days, there was no king in Israel. That is where the story begins. Not with a battle, not with a decree, with a man, a Levite, a man set apart for God's service, who takes a woman into his house. Scripture calls her a concubine, a wife of lesser standing, but a wife still. She is unhappy in his house. She leaves him and returns to her father's home in Bethlehem, and 4 months pass with the two of them living apart. The Levite decides to go after her. He does not go with anger, or at least the text gives him none. He goes with a servant, 2 donkeys, and what looks at first like tenderness. He wants to speak kindly to her, to win her back. Her father welcomes him with feasting, again and again, day after day, reluctant to let his daughter go. It is warm inside that house. It is the last warm place in the entire story. Finally, late on the 5th day, the Levite insists on leaving. His father-in-law's hospitality had been generous, almost too generous, delaying them until the sun was already low in the sky. They set out anyway, later than any sensible traveler would. The servant suggests they stop for the night in Gibeah, a Canaanite city, a foreign city. The Levite refuses. He wants to sleep among his own people. He wants Israelite ground under him for the night. They press on to Gibeah instead, a town belonging to the tribe of Benjamin. His own people. No one there took them in. You know this feeling, even if your version of it looks nothing like a foreign road at dusk. The particular loneliness of being surrounded by people who share your name, your history, your faith, and still finding every door closed to you. Sometimes the coldest room is the one full of your own people. They sit in the town square as the light fails, waiting until an old man, a fellow traveler, not even a native of the town, finds them and offers them a bed under his roof. He warns them plainly, do not spend the night in the square. So they go inside, wash the road from their feet, and sit down to eat. That is when the men of the city surround the house. They pound on the door and demand that the old man send out his guest, the Levite, so that they can abuse him. The old man begs them not to do something so vile and offers them his own daughter and the Levite's concubine instead, hoping the horror will land somewhere other than on his guest. And in the moment that decides everything that follows, the Levite takes his concubine, the woman he had traveled miles to win back, the woman he had just sat and eaten bread with, and pushes her out the door to the men in the street. He shut the door behind her. There was no answer that night from anyone inside that house. No cry raised, no attempt made once the door was bolted. The men outside kept her the entire night until the black sky over Gibeah began to lighten toward morning, and only then did they let her go. She came back to the house at dawn. She did not knock. She had nothing left to knock with. She reached the door and her hands found the threshold, and that is as far as her strength carried her. She went down at the doorpost of the house where her husband had slept the whole night through, and she did not get up again. Whatever had been done to her in the dark had taken everything a body has to give. The text does not linger on the details of the night, and neither will this one. Some griefs are not meant to be watched, only grieved. What matters is what waited for her on the other side of that door, and what did not. The Levite opened the door in the morning, ready to leave, already thinking of the road ahead. Whatever tenderness had carried him all the way to Bethlehem to win her back had not survived one single night of cost to himself. He had given her up to save his own skin, and now, in the full light of morning, he could not even bring himself to see what that decision had done. He lifted her, whether she was already gone or breathed her last on the journey home. The text leaves unsaid, onto the donkey, and carried her the rest of the way in silence. Think about what that journey must have looked like from the outside. A man leading a donkey down a familiar road, a woman's body across it, passing other travelers who had no idea what they were looking at. No one stopped him to ask what had happened. No one along that road demanded an explanation. Carelessness is rarely loud. It usually just keeps walking, one foot after another, until it arrives somewhere it can no longer be ignored. At his house, he laid her on a table, took a knife and cut her body into 12 pieces, one for each tribe of Israel, and sent a piece to every corner of the land, a message written in the only language he apparently believed anyone would listen to. It is worth noticing what he did not send. He did not send a plea for justice in his own voice. He did not go himself, town to town, and say, "This is what was done to my wife, and this is what I did when it happened." He let a mutilated body speak the words he was never willing to say about his own part in the night. A man careless enough to hand her to violence was, in the end, precise enough to carve the evidence of it into 12 exact pieces. Every tribe that received a piece of her body said the same thing to one another. Nothing like this has ever happened. Not since the day Israel came up out of Egypt. Think about it. Decide what to do. There was no king in Israel. The tribes gathered as one, 400,000 armed men, standing before God at Mizpah, and sent messengers to Benjamin demanding that the men of Gibeah, the men who had done this thing, be handed over for judgment. Benjamin refused. You have felt this before, even if nothing in your life has ever looked like Gibeah. The moment when a whole community would rather protect its own than face what one of its own has done. The quiet vote to look away, because the truth costs something none of them want to pay. It rarely announces itself as evil. It usually just looks like loyalty. Benjamin raised its own army, 26,000 men, and stood against the rest of Israel to defend a town that had done the unspeakable. The war that followed was not brief and it was not clean. Israel went up to fight and was beaten back twice. 22,000 men fell on the first day, 18,000 more on the second. The tribes wept before the Lord, fasted, and asked whether they should even continue. And still they went out a third time, because a nation without a king could apparently still find the will to punish evil, even if it took the deaths of 40,000 of its own sons to get there. On the third day, Israel set an ambush outside Gibeah, drew the Benjamite army into open ground, and turned the city itself into smoke behind them. When the men of Benjamin looked back, and saw their town burning, they understood too late what they had actually been fighting to protect. Benjamin was crushed. 25,000 fell in a single day. The tribe that had refused to hand over a handful of guilty men now had almost nothing left at all. 600 survivors fled into the wilderness, hiding in a rock called Rimmon, while the rest of Israel put every remaining town of Benjamin, its people and its cattle, to the sword. There was no king in Israel. A tribe of the sons of Jacob had very nearly ceased to exist, not because of a foreign army, not because of famine, but because of one door, one night, and everyone afterward who chose the version of justice that felt most like vengeance. When the fighting finally stopped, Israel looked at what was left of Benjamin and wept again. This time not for the woman in Gibeah, but for the tribe they had almost erased trying to avenge her. They had sworn, in their fury, never to give their daughters in marriage to the 600 men who remained. Now they scrambled to find a way around their own oath so that one tribe of Israel would not vanish from the map completely. The story never gives her a name. She goes into the account as the concubine, a woman handed through a door by the one man who owed her protection, destroyed in the street by men who owed her nothing, and cut into pieces afterward by the same husband who had once traveled miles to bring her home. No one in the story, not her father, not the old man, not the tribes who went to war, ever calls what happened to her by its plainest name until her own body forces them to look. And even then, it is not her voice they respond. It is the shock of the pieces. Everyone in this story eventually did something about what happened in Gibeah. Almost no one did the right thing at the right time. The old man tried to protect his guest and offered up 2 women in his place. The Levite tried to save himself in the dark, and then, in the daylight, could not even offer his wife a moment of grief before demanding she get up. The men of Gibeah wanted to abuse a stranger and destroyed her instead. Benjamin was asked to hand over the guilty and chose war instead. And Israel, in its zeal to punish the guilty, came within 600 men of destroying an entire tribe God had chosen. This is what happens when everyone is left to decide right and wrong for themselves, with no higher authority to answer to. Not chaos all at once. Chaos one small self-protective decision at a time, each one reasonable to the person making it, each one adding up to a nation that can no longer tell justice from vengeance or protection from sacrifice. You have never cut a body into pieces, but you have known the pull to protect yourself at someone else's expense. You have known what it is to witness someone else's pain and respond with efficiency instead of grief. To say in your own way, "Get up, we're going," because their suffering was inconvenient to the plans you'd already made. This story is not asking you to imagine monsters far away. It is asking you to notice how ordinary every single decision in it actually was, including the coldest one. The book this story comes from ends the way it began. In those days, there was no king in Israel. Everyone did what was right in their own eyes. That is not a throwaway line. It is the verdict on the entire account, spoken once to open the story of a nation falling apart, and spoken again, almost word for word, to close it, as if the writer wanted to make absolutely certain no reader would miss it. A people with no one over them will always, eventually, arrive somewhere like Gibeah, and a man with no one over his own conscience will always, eventually, treat someone else's suffering as a delay to his own schedule. The Bible does not pretend this story has a tidy ending. Benjamin survives, barely, through a plan almost as troubling as the war that made it necessary. There is no clean resolution here, no verse that wraps the tragedy in a bow. What there is, instead, is an ache. The same ache the whole book of Judges keeps building toward, for a king who will not do what is right in his own eyes, but what is right in God's. That king does not come in this story, but the rest of Scripture keeps walking toward him, and centuries later one does arrive who does not shut the door on the vulnerable. He opens it. Who does not hand someone else over to save himself. He hands himself over to save others. Where the Levite gave up an innocent woman to spare his own comfort, Jesus gave up his own comfort, and then his life, to spare the guilty. Gibeah is what a nation looks like with no king at all. The gospel is what a king looks like when he finally comes. Sin is still crouching at every door we're tempted to shut on someone else. But there is, at last, a king who never does. Based on Judges 19 to 21.